When my husband and I first got married, I moved in with him and his family into their two-story house in a gated community. As a new wife and being pregnant at the time, I was always home, cleaning and making sure lunch was ready for my husband and his family before they returned from work and school. "It's so quiet in here," I mentioned to my husband one evening, wiping down the kitchen counter. "Almost too quiet." He chuckled, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "You'll get used to it, honey. It's just the house settling." I nodded, but a shiver ran down my spine as I glanced around the dimly lit room. "I hope you're right." One evening, while setting the table, I mentioned it to my husband. "You know, something about this house just feels off." He looked up from his phone, raising an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," I said, shaking my head. "It's like I'm always being watched. It started the first time I walked in." A month or two passed, and strange things started happening. I often felt as if I was being watched, but I dismissed it. Growing up with strict, young parents, I had never stayed out overnight, and odd occurrences were not new to me, possibly due to my grandpa being a shaman. One afternoon, as I was cleaning, I noticed a cold draft in the hallway. It made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "Is there a window open somewhere?" I muttered to myself, but after checking, I found everything closed tight. Later that evening, I told my husband about it. "Do you ever feel like there's a draft in the hallway?" He frowned. "No. Why?" "I felt one today, but all the windows were shut." "Maybe it's just the house settling," he suggested, trying to reassure me. I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling. Every creak and groan of the house seemed amplified in the silence of the day when everyone else was gone. One night, while we were lying in bed, I brought it up again. "Do you think it could be something else? You know, like a spirit?" He chuckled softly, pulling me close. "You're just letting your imagination run wild. There's nothing here but us." But his words did little to comfort me. The eerie sensations persisted, and as time went on, they only grew stronger. One afternoon, my husband and his family came home, and we decided to nap in our room, leaving the door wide open. We had four bedrooms, three upstairs and one downstairs. The master bedroom, which my husband and I shared, was upstairs, along with his brothers' and sisters' rooms. His parents' room was downstairs. I woke up to something touching my thighs. Initially, I thought it was my husband, but I quickly realized I was paralyzed, unable to move, feeling an oppressive weight on my chest. I fought against it, trying to break free, when suddenly I heard loud footsteps racing up the stairs and into our room. My arms were wrapped around my husband, and I felt something touch my fingers. Terrified, I tried calling out to my husband, but he couldn't hear me. Then, as suddenly as it started, the presence vanished. I woke up my husband and told him everything. "John, wake up." I shook him, my voice trembling with fear. Something was in here. He groaned, still half asleep. "What are you talking about?" "I couldn't move," I explained, my voice shaking. "I felt something pressing down on me, and then I heard footsteps. Something touched my fingers." He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Are you sure you weren't dreaming?" "I know what I felt," I insisted, my eyes wide with fear. "It wasn't a dream." He frowned, looking around the room. "There's no one here now." "I know," I whispered, hugging my knees to my chest. "But it was here, John. It was real." He sighed, pulling me into his arms. "We'll figure it out. Maybe it was just a nightmare." I nodded, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The fear lingered, making it hard for me to fall back asleep. The house felt different, more sinister, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching us, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. Another night, I woke up to turn and look at my husband. He was facing away from me, so I turned back to sleep. Moments later, half awake, I heard a whisper in my ear telling me to look at the window and remove the red thing hanging there. Look at the window. Take off the red thing. A soft, feminine voice murmured, chilling me to the bone. I thought it was my husband, but when I turned, he was still asleep. The voice was feminine, and I realized it was a ghost. The red thing was a Hmong protection rag. Terrified, I forced myself back to sleep. I thought it was my husband, but when I turned, he was still asleep. The voice was feminine, and I realized it was a ghost. The red thing was a Hmong protection rag. Terrified, I forced myself back to sleep. The next morning, over breakfast, I recounted the experience to my husband. "John, something happened again last night," I said, my voice trembling slightly. I heard a woman's voice whispering in my ear. He looked up from his coffee, eyebrows raised. "What did it say?" "It told me to look at the window and take off the red thing hanging there," I replied, my hands trembling as I held my cup. He frowned, clearly puzzled. "You mean the Hmong protection rag?" I nodded. "Yes, that one. I turned to talk to you, but you were still asleep. It wasn't you, John. It was a ghost." He sighed, setting his cup down. "That's really strange. Are you sure you weren't dreaming?" "I know what I heard," I insisted. "It was so real, and it wasn't a dream." He reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "I believe you, but maybe it's just stress or your imagination playing tricks on you." I shook my head. "It's not my imagination. This house, there's something wrong with it." He sighed again, trying to comfort me. "We'll look into it. Maybe we can have someone come and bless the house or something." I nodded, but I could see he was skeptical. The uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach told me that whatever was haunting us wasn't going to leave easily. A third encounter happened while I was on the phone with my husband, who was at work. I often stayed on the phone with him because I was scared to be alone in the house. One day, I fell asleep with him on speaker. I heard 3 knocks at my bedroom door, assuming it was my mother-in-law. "Hello? Is someone there?" I called out, my voice trembling with fear. Silence greeted me, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Slowly, I reached for the doorknob, my heart pounding in my chest. As I tried to get up, I realized I was paralyzed again. The knocking stopped, and I wondered why she didn't call out for me. "Mom, is that you?" I called out again, my voice shaky. Suddenly, the weight lifted, and I quickly got up, but when I opened the door, no one was there. My heart raced, and I stayed in my room until my husband and his family returned. When they finally arrived home, I rushed to greet them, relief flooding through me at the sight of familiar faces. "Hey, is everything okay?" my husband asked, concern etched on his face. I nodded, trying to steady my racing heartbeat. I I heard knocking at the door earlier. I thought it was your mom, but no one was there." His brow furrowed in worry. "That's strange. Maybe it was just the wind or something." I shook my head, my hands trembling. "No, it felt it felt different, like someone was there, but then they just disappeared." He wrapped me in a comforting hug, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the air. Something was terribly wrong in that house, and I feared that whatever it was only getting stronger. Another time, I was doing homework and eating chips. The sound of pages flipping in my room caught my attention, as if someone were reading my book. Heart pounding, I hurried back, half expecting to find someone there. "Hello?" I called out tentatively, my voice quivering with apprehension. But when I entered the room, it was empty, the window closed with no sign of a draft. I brushed it off, trying not to let fear consume me. Months later, after having my son, my husband's sister's daughter was sleeping downstairs. I went to check on her, then returned to my room, leaving the door slightly open. Suddenly, I heard the sound of running footsteps echoing up the stairs, followed by a door slamming shut. My heart skipped a beat, and I called out, "Emily, is that you?" But there was no response, only an eerie silence that sent shivers down my spine. Panic rising in my chest, I searched the rooms, only to find her still fast asleep downstairs. My heart dropped, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I dashed back upstairs, scooped up my son, and locked the door behind me. "Emily, wake up. We need to leave." I shook her gently, my voice urgent. With trembling hands, I messaged my sister-in-law, urging her to return home as soon as possible. Something sinister was lurking in the shadows of our home, and I feared for our safety more than ever before. One day, my husband experienced something himself. Home alone for the weekend, he heard knocking at our bedroom door while using the bathroom. Startled, he froze for a moment before gathering his courage to investigate. "Hello? Who's there?" he called out, his voice wavering with apprehension. With a pounding heart, he opened the door, expecting to find a logical explanation for the sound. But to his horror, there was no one there. His voice trembled as he yelled at the unseen presence to leave, his words echoing in the empty hallway. "Get out of here. You're not welcome," he shouted, his voice tinged with fear and anger. Everyone was out camping, and there was no one else in the house. A few months later, we moved out. The weight of the eerie encounters had become too much to bear, and we were eager to leave the haunted house behind. New tenants moved in, and their son, who slept in our old room, began experiencing similar eerie encounters. I shuddered at the thought of another family enduring the same horrors we had faced. "I heard something last night," the new tenant's son told his parents, his voice trembling with fear. "It sounded like someone knocking on the door." I'm relieved we moved out, but thinking back still scares me. I survived countless nights alone in that haunted house, each one filled with dread and uncertainty. My in-laws had thrown out belongings left by the previous tenants, who had also experienced strange events. They found clothes, pots, and pans, and even yellow tape from a possible crime scene. I often wonder what happened in that house before we moved in. The chilling encounters left an indelible mark on me, a constant reminder of the darkness that lurked within those walls. "Now that we're out of there, I never want to go back," my husband said, his voice filled with conviction. That place was pure evil. Now, I am just thankful we got out alive, our souls intact, but forever haunted by the memories of our time in that accursed place.